For technical people, if you're ever in need of like bad coding examples, then that's what I'm good at because I don't code in my day to day. So I created an AI video that shows a drone dropping sand, and then over the weekend it gained 4 million views. Even though I'm 33, I'm still of the generation that quite enjoys TikTok. So that's where I post a lot of my shenanigans. And if something is nice, then I do push it over to LinkedIn. I wouldn't even call it a wormhole. I would call it like a black hole of death because you'll end up getting sucked in and it's super hard to get out of. But the weird thing is when people believe something is real and you tell them it's not, they seem to double down.
We are live on the Objective Hiring Show. Today, we're joined by Luuk in the Netherlands. Luuk, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
And where I always like to start is to hear a little bit more about the guests, just so our audience can start to think about who they're listening to today.
Sure. I'm Luuk, I'm 33, and I've been in recruitment for, I guess, about 8 years now. I've worked in the data and AI field for about 7.5 of them, and mainly worked at a firm focusing on data and AI and helped grow that team, where I also got taught a lot about data and AI. So when I joined there, they gave me like a stack of books, this fake to work through. I took a lot of programming courses myself because I had a very high curiosity for anything really. So I just really like to know something about everything. So that's also where I learned how to program Python, SQL, did some web development stuff, took some analytics translation courses. But as a whole, I would say on a functional level, I'm always able to keep up with technical people. But for technical people, if you're ever in need of like bad coding examples, then that's what I'm good at because I don't code in my day to day.
That's a great introduction. And you also dabble in a bit of content. You occasionally go viral online. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, you could say that. So I had a big one, of course, last weekend where I created a bit of fake news. So I thought it'd be funny to do like to ridicule we have in the Netherlands this thing called Saharan dust clouds, and they come across the country, and when in the morning you go to your car, it's covered in dust, and it always seems to happen like within a week of going to a car wash. So I thought it might be funny if I make like a video where it looks like drones are dropping the sands in large areas, and it's by order of those car washes to actually get more revenue in because more people need to wash their cars. So I created an AI video that shows a drone dropping sand, and then over the weekend it gained 4 million views. I didn't quite expect that one.
And I'm sure you've got something else interesting planned for April Fools, so we'll keep an eye out for that. What's your platform of choice? You're doing this on like Instagram or?
Oh yeah, so my Instagram is closed off, so that one is really private. But even though I'm 33, I'm still of the generation that quite enjoys TikTok. So that's where I post a lot of my shenanigans. And if something is nice, then I do push it over to LinkedIn. But mostly it's TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, I'll have to keep an eye out for that. I'll have to log into TikTok for the first time in my life and see some of the shenanigans.
There's some good stuff that you can use in there. Right? I quite often use it when I have like an event or a meetup or anything, and I need some quick video content around it. If you make like let's say 20 short videos of 5 seconds, dump them all into TikTok, and then let it edit by its own using AI, it will then place music under it and edit it on the music, and you can easily export it without the TikTok logos on it and use it in short form content with like a nice LinkedIn post. So it's quite useful actually.
Excellent. Okay, I'll have to check it in and go down that wormhole. I'm always wary of myself with these kinds of technologies, and I could see being in it for 8 hours, suddenly realizing, oh my God, where has my day gone?
I wouldn't even call it a wormhole. I would call it like a black hole of death because you'll end up getting sucked in and it's super hard to get out of. So, be wary.
So you've created your little bit of funny fake news, which is great. And although some people are defending its veracity by the sounds of it, actually, it reminds me of, there was this thing a couple of years ago where someone came out with the theory that the birds were fake, and they tried to push the fake birds narrative. And then a lot of people actually believed and are on the street protesting in support of the fact birds are apparently fake. So you might have created a new movement. I mean, I hope not, But we'll see.
I know that story, and I know that the people protesting were part of that fake movement. So it wasn't as serious. I hope, hopefully, maybe there's a couple of loonies between the normal people there. But yeah, for sure, I am a bit worried that it might lead its own life. And I've also made a video explaining how I created it and that it's AI. And I commented to a lot of people, hey, it's AI, it's not real. But the weird thing is when people believe something is real and you tell them it's not, they seem to double down. It's super hard to get across that no, it's not real. Be a bit more critical to what you're seeing. It's difficult. And I've learned that after this weekend for sure.
Yes. And from fake news to fake resumes, I guess you could say, a lot of candidates these days are using ChatGPT or Claude to at least optimize their resume based on a job description. But a lot of the sense I've been getting speaking to people is that, if we had some kind of like truth index of a resume, it seems to be at an all-time low. Are you seeing the same thing, or is it just people, rewording things and making it sound better?
No, I think it's a difficult one. But the thing I do see that a lot of people, I think, making like a summary of your resume using AI and assisting in that way, I think is a good way to go. But the problem is when certain aspects of your work history are being, let's say, exaggerated, like all these new technologies, they get listed, but then when you ask about it in an interview, they haven't really used it. And they just read something about it and thought it would be relevant to post in there. And then AI, of course, doesn't know how much you did or did not do with certain technology, so it might give some great results. And people do need to be wary about that because I've seen it a little bit. It's also everybody's resume seems to be formatted the exact same way. Like
Is it that Europass format? Like I see that seems to be quite common in Europe.
Oh, no, that one I've seen a lot as well. But no, that's not all formats, but the way that the sentences are structured, that's mainly the same, right? Because they can have maybe some different layouts, but the sentence structure and specific words, they seem to be a lot more common, like leveraged. I leveraged this to do that. It's something I wouldn't typically see in a typical resume before. It's something that, probably business people use a lot. And maybe that's the training data I use.
Yeah. It's a very MBA businessy term. Well, I'm gonna go against the grain then. I'm gonna put levered instead of leverage, just to be a bit of a rascal and see how that goes.
Yeah, because I've never seen anyone use that one, so that would stand out for sure. And spearheaded also. Spearheaded. That's a word that's super common now on resumes since the dawn of AI, really.
And that's so fascinating, the bias in the training data, because like if I ever written the word spearheaded in my life in any context, I don't think so. But now it's on every single person's resume.
Like some words you immediately see that it's AI generated text, really.
Yeah, the ones I noticed for ChatGPT are like ever evolving landscape. If I ever see those words together, I'm like, come on, man, just at least replace that with something else.
Yeah, also sounds very familiar when it comes to resumes.
And what is your general perception of candidates using AI in the hiring process? Is it fair game? Is there some limit to what they should and should not be using it for? What's your overall view of things at the moment?
No, I think it can be super useful, but I think the mistake comes in when you give it too much control and not check enough. So, for example, I can see it being very useful when you have a resume, already made it yourself, and then you find 1, 2, maybe 3 companies that you think, oh, this might be interesting for me. And then with the use of AI, maybe see how you can adjust your resume to, stand out more positive because it matches more with what is being sought after there. Because let's say you've done some things in supply chain. This company here focuses on that. So then you highlight more your relevant experience on that side, right? I think when you think it that way, super fair game, smart, and saves you a bit of time. I think it becomes a bit more of a mistake when you just let the AI run its course and make decisions really for you in what needs to be on the resume, and it starts hallucinating things. I think especially anything AI related, when it becomes more towards decision part of the equation, then I'm a bit wary about it because essentially you're giving out that much responsibility to what essentially boils down to a rock that we tricked into thinking by shooting lightning into it, and I don't think that's something I'd be comfortable with.
Yeah, I think it's a very different ball game of, as you say, you've written this comprehensive document and then it's summarizing or rewording based on things, as opposed to the other way around, where it's like, well, here's the JD, write the perfect CV for me without knowing anything I've done. Although I can see why people would be tempted to do that, because that's easier probably and quicker and ends up with a more perfect looking resume for the job description. But I think it's such a short run game for a candidate, because as you say, surely they're going to get into that first interview. You're going to ask them a question about X and they're like, what is X? It's like, well, X is on your resume, so you better be able to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I also found slightly odd, I have to say, was like the last time we were hiring some salespeople as part of our overall application process, we had a skills test, so fair enough, but we had also just some questions that I wanted to know from them. And these were questions that were trying to help make the onboarding process as good as possible. So I was basically asking them things like, hey, imagine it's your first day at Aluba. What are the 3 things you would need from us to be as successful in your role as possible? And so it's like, for me, a very personal question. I cared about their exact opinion, right, wrong, or indifferent. I wanted to know what they thought. But the vast majority of candidates just had clearly copy and pasted from ChatGPT, which is not helpful to me because I can ask ChatGPT. I don't care about the large language model. I care about what you personally think. And so I feel like that's a misguided use of AI personally.
Yeah, for sure, because it's something that should be coming from your own opinion. What do you need? Wow. Did you actually again have a conversation about them with them about this?
I did. So most of them I wouldn't have ended up interviewing, but some of them that I interviewed, I did. I can't exactly remember what they said because it was about a year ago now. What one other candidate I can remember had told me, I wanted to get ahead of the game, and so I've developed this sales playbook over the weekend, implying that they put in this extra work, which they didn't need to do at all, but kind of almost hanging their hat on the effort thing and saying, like, I'm really motivated, look at what I've done. But then they just copied and pasted something into ChatGPT. I'm like, well, it's not really of any value. And you're kind of pretending as though you've done it. So it's like a double negative, in my view, anyway.
Bad move on their part.
I think so. Personally. When we chatted, it's probably a month or 2 ago now, you'd mentioned that you were running some hiring workshops, and the way you were approaching it, I thought was really interesting. And I'd love to hear more about what you did in those workshops, why you did them, how the sessions went.
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of a problem with a lot of hiring processes, like that's the things you're looking for versus what you're interviewing for seems to be a misalignment, and it can be in different aspects, right? So maybe person A has a very different view on what this requirement means than person B. Also, that there's a miscommunication between what is asked in different interview stages. So you end up with a candidate that's maybe answering the same questions in different stages, which is also from a candidate's perspective not a great experience. So what I typically do with those hiring sessions is that, or like that's hiring workshops, is that we have these different post-it colors. Let's say we have 3 colors, and one is hard skills, soft skills, and the other one might be culture or educational background, stuff like that. And everybody, like, there's probably like 4 people present, people who actually do the role, maybe some sales or like a hiring manager, something like that. And each of them write down for themselves what do you feel like a profile for this role is. And then one after the other, we start posting it on the wall, and also explain what we mean by something. Because when they write down, they need to be a good communicator. And I ask you, and I ask somebody else, what does it mean with good communicator? It might be a bit similar, but still it will be two different answers. And we need to attach like business definitions to every requirements that we put on, so we all understand what we're looking for here. Then the second part is looking, okay, now we have this huge list of requirements for the profile that we have. So if I find somebody that doesn't have these two things here, are we not going to interview them? Yeah, we will. Oh, okay. So they're not really required. They're nice to have. And that way you can maybe eliminate some other things there. And then finally, when you have that, you map out all these requirements that you wrote down over the interviewing process. So you have several different steps. What are you asking at which phase of the process, and how are you going to ask it? So that way you have more of a structured approach to what you're asking throughout the whole interview process. And then finally, to really round things up, you create some example questions per interview stage, and with an answer matrix attached to it. So instead of saying, here's the answer, here's the question, and here's the answer we're looking for, we give you an example question with some elements of good or bad examples of answers you would typically get. Because there's, of course, a lot more ways to answer a question correctly than just one, especially in IT, I think. There's more roads lead to Rome. And it gives a lot more structure and a repeatable outcome to the interviewing process, and has less chance of, getting a different outcome depending on the interviewing members you are selecting.
That is fantastic, and such a great way to solve just so many different problems that you've outlined there, in terms of that inconsistency you could get, in terms of that subjectivity. Yeah, great example of the communication skills. You could ask 100 people what a good communicator is, and I feel like you'd get almost 100 unique answers, probably, like some crossover, but maybe unique.
Yeah, but it gets more difficult even when it's about technical subjects. So if they write down they need to be able to write Python, and then okay, so how do you judge if somebody is good at writing Python? And you ask that, then you get so many different answers, and that makes it very difficult to make the right decisions when doing interviews, and making the decision this person should head forwards towards the next interview stage, because your opinion on what is good might vary differently from the next person.
I'm wondering, how did you balance the variety of views you would have had from very different stakeholders? Like, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of when I've been, let's say, a technical hiring manager in the past. To be honest, I would have thought, well, at the end of the day, my opinion is actually the most important one. Was there some sense of like a hierarchy in the different views, or was everyone's views equal, or how did you, like, who does someone have like a casting vote? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so I'm in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands just is very non-hierarchical, right? We don't like hierarchy situations. And especially for me, I have the mindset that when you're hiring for a team, then that team should have an equal say in who joins that team. So the decision on whether or not somebody progresses through the next stage lies with the people interviewing at that stage, and not a hiring manager that wasn't present during that interviewing process. And I think as well, if you, let's say you are an interviewer and you interview someone together with, of course, there's always two people there, and you both give a negative recommendation, and then the hiring manager says, well, I don't really care about your opinion, we're still hiring this person, then that gives such a wrong message about the effort that you put in, because you're also investing time into interviewing somebody, and then gets pushed aside. So why would you help out the next time then if your opinion isn't actually valued?
Right. So if everyone's going to be involved in the hiring process in interviews, and the interviews are valued, then of course they should be involved at the start as well to define the role and everything like that.
And who better to know what's required to be successful in a role than the people already in the role? It's going to be a bit more difficult if it's like the first hire for a role, of course. But I work in data AI consultancy, right? So there's more people doing that type of role, so we have a good grasp of what is necessary, and especially people that have been in that role with us for 5, 6, 7 years already.
Was there anything surprising that came out of this process? Like, I imagine this is something you've done before for other roles as well in other companies. Is there anything that's kind of surprising that comes out of these sessions?
Yeah, so it's mostly to when you are identifying, okay, where is already alignment on what we're looking for, and where is it missing, right? So as you're posting up these post-it notes, and you're first doing all the hard skills, person by person, so it's only filled by hard skills, and then it's only filled by soft skills, right? You end up clustering all these things together, right? Because maybe the first person, if you're looking for a data engineer, obviously they're going to post Python, and everybody else is going to do it as well. But maybe there's only one person that does some other technical requirement, right? It starts a discussion. Okay, why are you posting that? Because I think it's important, because it's used in your work, and this and this and this and this, and start this discussion. I think that's the most important bit of doing a workshop like this with the right people present. And also quite often starts a discussion on what the educational background of a certain person should be. Or do we really need somebody with 5 years of experience? Or do we look at what they have done actually? Because oftentimes you will find that people with maybe 3 years of experience are better at being technical hands-on than somebody who's done 7 years of experience, but has done the same exact thing all the time. And the person with 3 years of experience has been, has a bit more of a T-shaped profile, more broader experience with some specialization there. And the discussions you get there, those are the most valuable you get out of that workshop, really.
This is great, because I feel like, well, as a data person, the way I think about hiring is like a matching problem. You got to have some candidates on one side and a job on the other. But the problem is that so often the data sets, the data quality on either side of that matching is pretty crap. Like the average JD that, you've pulled out of the desk drawer or the folder that you reposted from 3 years ago is not very accurate. And so going through this session, which might be a fair bit of effort, there's lots of people involved, is well worth it, because so many processes, I think, get derailed from step 0 because they don't get the definition right in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, if we're talking about AI and hiring, I think one of the most useful ones I have on that one is that when you look at job descriptions, AI can be super helpful. That's something that I've used for years now. So I'm a big fan, of course, as is everyone, of ChatGPT, right? And I've had a paid account for years now, I think. So I'm also building a lot of custom GPTs. And something I found very useful is when you fill out, I have a custom GPT that has a lot of papers about, for example, psychological triggers, inclusive language, but also our corporate wording guide, example projects of things we've done, our HR documenting like what is it that we can actually give to people working here. And then it's set up in a way that it can do two things for me. It can either look at an existing job description and come up with recommendations and identify if maybe we're using too much masculine language, or how to change it to a bit more neutral. Or I can just give it a job requirement list and ask it to generate something completely new. And it will actually come up with lines like, it will give examples of different projects we've done that vary in scope or complexity to illustrate a bit better what it is that we are doing and why it is exciting to do a project with us. And of course, writing job descriptions, you probably know, super difficult. It takes a long time. You're always staring at your screen like, type some more stuff. And usually you end up making it way too long. And I think the worst sin is when you only make like requirements lists and make like this big grocery shopping list of things you want to see. And with the help of like a custom GPT like this, it becomes a lot more story driven and engaging for somebody.
Excellent. And yeah, these hiring sessions then help you make that job description, that job ad as accurate and compelling as possible in the first place. So then your sourcing is better, you're attracting the right candidates, and you're going down the right path to begin with. You'd mentioned also in these hiring sessions, part of it is about being able to set up this nice kind of consistent hiring process where you know the kinds of questions you're going to ask because they're linked to the requirements for the role, and you're not overlapping on questions. You've kind of set it all up with a lot of logic. When you've seen hiring processes that lack structure and haven't had that thought through process, what typically happens in those scenarios? What are some of the downsides or upsides, if you can think of any?
Upsides, if I can think of any, when you don't have that structure. So I think there's a couple of pitfalls that really can come from lacking structure. Well, number one thing would be the lack of repeatable outcome, right? That you get a different outcome depending on the interviewer's present. I think also a lack of structure comes from companies not valuing the growth engine that recruitment is enough. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you will see a lot of companies that really emphasize, yeah, recruitment is very important for us. It's the engine for our growth, but then not set up the company in a way that actually enables it. So you have an engine, but you need to also connect the fuel lines there. And the result of that is that it's very difficult to schedule interviews, for example, or get people involved and feel like they have a stake in this. And that leads to long delays in actually planning interviews. And I think especially within, the field that we are in the tech sector, if anybody really raises their hands, okay, here's some new job, you have something else super quick. So with good structure, you can also ensure that your time to hire is shortened and you can schedule those interviews quickly. Maybe automate some scheduling parts of it, right? So when you send me an invite to do this interview, you send like a calendar link or something similar, where I could schedule something like that. That's of course very easy when it's just one person involved. When there's multiple persons, it gets a bit more difficult, but still doable. But yeah, when a company just lacks that structure, it's going to be an issue to really keep things at a good speed and round off your entire hiring process within a good amount of time, I would say.
Yes, and technology, I guess, when used right, supports that. I sense, this is working, running Aluba for 6 years. I sense sometimes in talent and recruitment circles, there's a slight mistrust of using technology in some cases in hiring it, or perception almost that it could dehumanize the process, like it's automate things away, which it can do. But I also think what could be more dehumanizing than never hearing back because the processes are so tediously manual that nobody could possibly get back to every candidate, or people slipping through the cracks, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I fully agree. But I think also if you utilize automations and AI at the right spots, it actually humanizes the process more. So for me as a recruiter, I hate admin work, like with a passion. I just hate it. And the thing I enjoy most is having conversations and connecting with people and hearing great stories and, telling about how great the company I work at, like what it could mean for them as a professional and as a person. Those things I really enjoy. I don't enjoy all the tedious stuff. And the more time I'm removed from that, the more time I am able to do things that actually add value for the company that I work at, right? Which is actually connecting with people, getting them enthusiastic about joining, finding opportunities well, and pushing people forward into the hiring pipeline. And that, with AI, that you are more enabled to do something like that. And also it has a great benefit, of course, to the company you work at, because I'm a very data-driven guy. I just love it, and especially with all the teachings I've had over the years at the previous firm I worked at. So I even create my own models about recruitment and like the capacity you need as in recruitment professionals or sources and stuff like that, based on historical data, and then also on the data that we need for this year, for example. And then depending on how you time box your time you have available as a recruiter team, it calculates how much full-time equivalent you would need to actually fill your hiring needs. And the first thing I noticed when I built that model is when I could reduce admin time and automate stuff away. I think in one particular situation I had at a different company where the full-time requirements for recruitment was like 7 or 8 full-time employees. And by getting some automation done, it got reduced to 2.5.
Wow.
And that tells you a lot about how much bullshit work you actually have to do when you don't do all the automation stuff. Because it sounds a bit bad. Oh, you need to let go of other people. No, those people weren't even there. The people that were there were just overworked because they had to do so much extra and not being able to achieve their goals because they got stuck in these tasks that weren't generating value.
Yeah. Yes. Clever automation for the win, for sure. You'd mentioned, yes, being a fan of kind of data-driven processes and metrics and whatnot. With AI in hiring then, where do you see the biggest opportunities in the next kind of couple of years? What would you like to see AI do in hiring, and maybe where could you see humans still doing a better job?
So obviously, humans doing a better job is in the face-to-face interviews and really make a connection with new employees. I always say, like, for new colleagues you go this far, but for friends you go even further. And I think that's what humans do, right? You create connections with people. You create the feeling of belonging to a group, and also that you want to put in work for that group. And AI will never do that. It's just a machine. I think what AI is incredible at, especially now when I look at what I appreciate most in the recruitment field when it comes to AI products, is about identifying opportunity. So, for example, when you have especially these larger enterprises, they can have hundreds, maybe thousands of roles open. I don't know, right? So as a recruiter, it's also going to be impossible to identify a candidate coming in that might not be a fit for what you are hiring for, might be a fit somewhere else. But there's so many roles that it's very difficult to identify those opportunities. So there's a lot of different applicant tracking systems right now that are developing systems, and some of them are live, some are still in beta or something, where candidates coming in will automatically also be matched to other opportunities with your company. Or if you are opening up a new requisition, it also identifies maybe some key candidates that you've spoken in the past that might be a match here. I think those would be very beneficial if that's more utilized, because knowing for a fact in the past that people that I've spoken to before, a year later, could turn into hires. But keeping track of those people manually again, super tedious and hard work. Getting some AI assistance in that, super beneficial. I think it's beneficial for both ways, right? You create an easier way of identifying the opportunities for people that might want to work for you. And it also identifies the low-hanging fruit for you as a recruiter or as a company where you can find those hires.
Yeah, that's a great one, and should be quite easily measurable as well. It's almost like a new channel. It's like a kind of remarketing channel or rematching channel or something. And so figuring out that it's working and is valuable will be pretty immediate, I would have thought. Have you seen, you mentioned like some ATS is trying to roll this out at the moment. Have you like played around with any or seen any of those beta tests?
Yes. So I know for a fact that Team Taylor has it already. And another platform I'm a big fan of is Recruity from Talent. And I know that they are building it right now, and it will go live probably within the next quarter of this year.
We were talking about AI use cases in hiring, and I think I was asking you about whether or not you think AI is going to be used in the actual like core selection and decision making of who to hire, rather than humans, or at least partly AI driven.
Yeah. So I think, and I sincerely hope not, because that decision part of the process for me is just I cannot fathom having the trust in a thinking rock to make that decision for you, rather than trusting on your own knowledge and experiences, and also the relevant context around the company that you work at, the position, the people you've talked to. I would never be comfortable with that. And I think there are some companies that have experimented with this, right? With some varying results, mainly getting the results of just hiring more of the same people instead of having also focus on maybe people that add to your culture. Yeah, I hope that will not become mainstream. That the AI will make a decision for you. I think also that the only thing you will get by it is then people will be even more driven to create resumes that the AI will select.
Yes, exactly. That will happen. I guess the current problem is, though, I think that maybe we aren't quite as good at making hiring decisions as we might like to be. For example, there's I'm sure there's been probably similar studies in Holland. There was one in Australia a few years ago where the University of Sydney got all these all these resumes, and basically just changed the names on the resumes and applied for lots of jobs to then test, was the name itself a factor in whether or not this person would get a callback. And they tested Chinese sounding names against Anglo-Saxon sounding names. Cut a long story short, they found that if you applied to a job in Australia on average with a Chinese name, you would have only 1/3 the chance of a callback as with an Anglo name, which is pretty dreadful. And they did a good job at controlling for all the other factors and variables you might think about, like language and anything like that. And so it's like a pretty devastating result. And I feel like maybe some kind of well-trained, controlled AI could maybe do a better job or more consistent job in that selection bit of the process. What do you reckon?
Yeah, but so is that a decision that gets made before they are spoken to? I'm wondering.
The decision from the AI, you mean?
No, but when you're saying that people with for example, Chinese names have less chance to be hired, are they being spoken to or are they applying and then rejected immediately?
It's specifically from the application to the callback rate. So they measured the rate at which the resume would get either an email or a callback.
So for me, the solution there doesn't necessarily lie in AI. It lies more in a couple things. So I, I think a lot of people, they are trying to be unbiased. I think being unbiased is impossible. It's human nature to have bias in you. I think it's a lot more reasonable to request people that are participating in interviewing that they become more aware of those biases and teach them about the different biases there are, and acknowledge that you have those ones, so you can be a bit more mindful of it and how to maybe prevent some of it, right? In terms of also helping out in not disregarding candidates that might be a great fit but have maybe the wrong name or background. So something I did two things to get this done. The first one being that when people apply, they automatically move to like a resume check step. There's about 3 or 4 people that are then automatically requested to write an evaluation based on that resume. They cannot see each other's evaluations before putting in their own, so they cannot influence each other there. The other thing is that the resumes are fully anonymized, so names are blurred out, websites are blurred out, pictures are blurred out, pronouns are blurred out, locations are blurred out. You're only basing your evaluation of this person's resume on their resume and nothing else. And only after I've spoken to them, then that information becomes visible again. And I've been able to have a conversation with these people and make an assessment whether or not it's going to be a fit for us. I think those would solve the problem more than an AI would.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that approach. I mean, if you've anonymized and removed all the information or noise that could be used to then result in that bias, then that should be the job done. I agree.
And that's not a manual task, by the way. It's something that's done automatically, so it doesn't require any time from me.
Yes, and that's implemented in the ATS you use, I'm assuming.
Yes, luckily it is. And I think even if you were to create some AI that would try to remove that bias, right, make the decision for you, it will always have bias in it because it's trained on something that has an opinion attached to it already.
Yes. we've spoken quite a lot about AI, but one slightly different thing I'd like to ask you about is if you've ever seen any kind of unusual or unconventional methods to find or attract people to roles.
Ah, okay. So maybe I can give one of my own that I've done in the past. Um, so I have a lot of different hobbies, and at some point I thought, "Hmm, I really enjoy racing and karting a lot. It would be nice if I maybe get some more people involved in my hobby." So whenever I spoke to people that were interesting for me, as like from a hiring perspective, and in the introductions, of course, you of course share some personal things, right? And I of course also mentioned that I'm a big fan of karting. Um, at some point, I assembled a small list of engineers who also enjoyed karting. So I rented out an outdoor karting circuit, and I went karting with like 25 engineers, and I just literally just had a fun day with people that were relevant to my work as well. Um, but I did not approach this event as a hiring event, just as a networking event, right? For them also to have a bit of fun. Um, but the thing is that it does strengthen your network and your connections, and it did actually end up in 3 data engineers hired for me. So it was quite unconventional, and even came with zero investment because I didn't approach this as a hiring event. I approached this as like just a simple networking fun activity. So they paid for their activity and had a good time. I gave a round of beers. That's it.
Well, not only is that a great sourcing story, it's also a great networking story because I think for a lot of people, when they hear about networking, they think about some tedious, boring, forced fun drinks event where you're shaking hands with people you don't really want to speak to. But you've managed to turn it into, you've gotten your hobby crossed over with networking. That's a great one.
Yeah, I can even say that when I was a little bit younger, I loved skateboarding, and turns out there's also quite some IT people at the skate park, so I also made a hire there. Strangely enough.
That's wonderful. My mind's now racing. I'm into football, and so I feel like I should combine football with networking. But I'm also a very, very crazy player on the field, so I'm not sure that's going to be to my advantage if I go and kick and fight some of the people I'm trying to network with. So who knows?
But even an event like that would be great, wouldn't it? Just challenge like maybe 2 different companies and pit the teams against each other, and then that would create also really fun content. So for me, like work needs to be enjoyable and fun, and I think I'm at my best when the place I work at doesn't necessarily feel like just an employer, but more of a community hub I'm a part of, and with great other people you share and work share a lot of things with and do and work together. And of course, you need to get shit done. Uh, but if you're enjoying it, then you're a lot more productive. It takes less energy, and I think events like this really add to that perception of it being more of a community rather than just an employer.
Wonderful. That's such a great example. Luke, it's been such an easy and enjoyable conversation today. We've covered off lots of ground. It's been fun. It's been funny. It's been interesting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, it's been fun indeed. Thank you for having me.